Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, no matter where you're watching us from around the globe. I say thank you for allowing us into your homes, but most importantly, into your hearts. If you're watching us on the DBNA television network, a sincere thank you for your continued support of our show, this network, and the other outstanding talent, and continue to support those sponsors. If you're listening to us in podcast form, Willie T and I say, put both feet on the gas, crank that knob up, and let us put that flavor in your ear. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to lace them up once again for another edition of the Coach Scott Field Show. And I am beyond excited to have Willie T. Ribbs on as a guest on our show. Let me just give a brief introduction because you're not here to hear me. You're here to listen to this icon. No, he's more than a barrier breaker. He kicked down the walls. What Tiger Woods was to the PGA, what Jackie Robinson was to Major League Baseball, what Willie O'Rue was to the NHL. Ladies and gentlemen, Willie T. Ribbs was the first African-American driver of the Indy 500, and we've got thousands of stories to share. And listen to this championship mindset that this legend and this icon is going to share with you. Willie T. Ribbs, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thanks for having me, Scott, Coach. I got to tell you, and we were talking before the red light came on, that I don't know how. I see all the basketballs in the background. I don't know how to dribble. I don't. It's pretty embarrassing because, as I was saying, my wife played for Montana State. My wife's 6'2". I'm 5'10". And her sister, Cass Bauer, played 10 years professional, including Sacramento Monarchs. So,
Yeah, WNBA.
Her sister is in the Montana Sports Hall of Fame. So she comes from a basketball family. And when I get, and they're all, out of the 6 kids, 5 of them are girls, right? The shortest one is 6 foot all the way to 6'4".
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So, I walk behind them when we go out.
Hey, you may not be able to dribble a basketball, but I've never been in a open wheel car driving over 200 mile an hour down a stretch into turn 1 at the Indy 500. So what did that feel like to have that much power, that much centrifugal force on your helmet trying to, hit your spot getting into turn 1?
I get asked all the time, what's it like to drive at Indy? And I guess it would be like an astronaut trying to explain to me what it's like, blasting off through the Earth's atmosphere, right?
Wow.
Right. And it's a mind-blowing experience, especially when you start running over 200 miles per hour, because that's not 200 miles per hour in a straight line. That's average speed 200. So, when you really start getting up into the stratosphere of speed at Indy, you're approaching a corner at about 235 miles per hour. Some now, when I was doing it, it was in the 230s. Some maybe high 230s. When you blink, just blink, you've gone 100 yards with one blink.
The length of a football field.
You've gone the length with one blink. So, when you're approaching that corner, you're laser focused on where you're going to make that initial turn in, and
Wow.
it's just a split second. You don't even think about it. You can't. If you're thinking, you're behind.
Yeah.
It's automatic, and you make that move, and you get into the corner, and once you see where you are in the corner, you start to point the car to the exit of the corner and then unwind it coming off. But it's real narrow. Indy was built in 1911. All right. They haven't widened it. Now, it was dirt in those days, but They have not widened it. The banking is still 9 degrees. And in those days, 1911, they were barely going 60 miles per hour,
Right.
right? Now it's 240 nearly.
Man. Yeah, and I think about how in tune a golfer is with his clubs and gets the feel. You had to learn a vehicle and be in tune with a vehicle and listen to the sounds, feel the vibrations, know exactly, where to get loose or where to turn it in. I mean, what is that like to have your foot on the gas, nothing on the brake, and just let that car do what it does, but yet push it to the brink every turn?
You're When I was racing, we didn't have the telemetry that they have now. I mean, they've got everything. The driver now doesn't really have to say a whole lot in debriefing. They can look at the printouts and see where's throttle trace is, how much steering angle he's putting in. They can read all of that, right? They know about how fast you are at every foot of that track. So, if the car was not performing right when I was driving, this is your butt. And this
Right,
is your
right.
butt at high speed, right?
Ooh,
Remember that commercial? This is your brain. They break the egg, right? And this is your brain on drugs. Well, this is what your butt was like.
man.
And because you were so low, you were right on the deck. Your butt was this far off the ground because you're riding that low in an Indy car. And if you start the difficult thing about Indy was the car was very subtle. I mean, if it was hooked up, it felt like on rails. But if it wasn't hooked up, if you didn't get the grip you wanted in the front or the rear, and the rear was the worst place to have low grip, because once that car starts to rotate, it happens you don't even realize it until it's rotated. And you'll see a lot of crashes there where they're in the center of the corner and all of a sudden the car snaps. That's, and you're on the edge, but it's so hard to feel that, you really got to pay attention. You
Oh,
really got to keep that car in a headlock the whole
so
time.
so driving that car has to be like piloting a plane. I mean, yeah, you've got, instruments that they are telling you, but I'm sure a lot of that, and you could speak on this, is going to come down to feel and what feels comfortable to you, and where to push it.
One thing about piloting that plane, you've got a lot of airspace to correct that thing if it goes loose on you, right?
Oh
At
man.
Indy, when it goes loose, you're into the wall. Just that.
Oh
You don't
man.
have. I came off turn 4 one year, and I think it was '93, and right in the center of the corner, the car, it was so subtle. It just sort of does one of these. And in a blink, I caught it and I came off the corner and I got on the radio going down the straightaway and I radioed to the team. I said, "Did you guys see that?" They said, "No, we didn't see that." I said, "You couldn't read the side of the car because I was sideways." They said,
Oh.
"No, we didn't see it." I said, "Well, I'm coming in." So we're going to park this thing and get her on the pad and get the aero package right better on this thing.
Oh man, I just couldn't imagine that feeling because it's like your adrenaline has got to be running around that 2.5 mile oval for 500 miles. And I just can't imagine the rush and the amount of attention to detail and focus that it takes for you. And how do you prepare your mind for that type of endurance?
Open. Open, right?
Yeah,
The, for example, in basketball, I assume that inside the stadium, the temperature never changes, right?
right,
One temperature, there's no wind, right?
right.
Nothing really, you might get a little sweat on the floor, right?
Yeah.
But at Indy, for example, uh, the air temperature is always changing. So soon as the air temperature, for example, if you start the race and it's 70 degrees or 75 degrees, and then halfway through the race, the temperature picks up to 82 or 83, the car is going to be totally different.
Wow.
Right? If the wind starts blowing on one end of the track, it's going to affect one end of the car at one part of the track, and the other part of the track, it's going to affect the rear.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
I mean, you're always paying attention, and the teams now they're telling you what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to pick up some temperature, and usually the hotter it is, less downforce. Thin air, hot air is thin air, right? Cold air is heavy air. Cold air makes the car stick better aerodynamically, gives it more downforce. That hot air, less downforce, a looser car.
Yeah. And see, and you think about that because like you mentioned, at 11 o'clock in the morning, when that, green flag drops and the race is starting, it's going to be a lot different and all the conditions are going to change within a couple hours, so what it is at 11 o'clock is going to be far different than what it is at 1:15 in the afternoon. And again, making those adjustments and communicating to your crew chief or your engineer of how that car's handling so they can make those adjustments to keep it on that rail for you, I assume.
Well, they do, and you're at Indy for almost a month, so a lot of practice you'll do at the hot part of the day, right? So what they're doing is the team and the driver gathering data. Okay, this is going to be a race simulation unless there's a thunderstorm or something like that. So, you're collecting data on what your wing angles should be at a certain time of the day, what your tire pressures should be at that time of day, and just in case that happens, then during the pit stop you can make changes to those setups. And most every race you're going to see during the race the drivers coming in. You're going to see the mechanics making changes on the wing. You'll see them dial in the front wing or dial it back, or and really that's the only change you can make. You really can't make a change to the rear that much, unless you want to spend a long time in the pit. So they're making adjustments on the front to control aero.
Wow. It's fascinating to me. And ladies and gentlemen, we got Willy T. Ribs on us with us here today. And if you haven't seen the documentary Uppity, do yourself a favor and learn this man's journey because it's fascinating. Willy, you knew at a young age that you wanted to be a race driver, just like I knew at a young age I wanted to be in basketball. But man, take us through the difference of what is the difference between an open wheel racing and say that Trans Am series that you raced in where the motor's up at the front, the weight's all different. I mean, there's got to be adjustments as a driver that you're making, but what are the biggest differences in that? Because to me, again, whatever vehicle they put you in, you found a way to go to the front, whether you had a good budget, no budget, good motor, poor motor, you were getting up front and you're saying, come catch me, boys.
One thing that I wanted to be able to do is be like Bobby Unser was, or AJ, or Mario.
Great racing
They
family.
could drive anything. Bobby Unser could win at Pikes Peak, right? Bobby Unser could win on the dirt. AJ could win on the dirt. Mario could win on the dirt. Then they could jump into an Indy car and win an Indy car, or get on a road course and win, or win in a stock car. I mean, Mario jumped in one Daytona 500 in his very first race. Went down there and damn near lapped them all. So did
Wow.
AJ Foyt, right? I wanted to be an all-around driver, and I guess in today's sports it'd be like, well, go play football, go play basketball, let's play baseball too, right?
The
Do it all.
versatility to be multi-sport. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I wanted to be able to do that. And so I never shied away from jumping into, and I started my career in England. I mean,
Right.
I
Yeah. It's
started in open,
1977, right? Yeah.
yeah, I started in Europe because I wanted to be in Formula One, right? And now they got the great Lewis Hamilton. I mean, he's seven-time world champion. Some people say he should have won it, won 8. However, you look at where he started. Well, I started there for a reason.
Yeah.
And then my family said, well, you got to come home because you're spending up the family money and your sisters and brothers need to go to college.
Yeah.
So I came back and then I jumped into Formula Atlantic, which was open wheel. Then I went to Trans Am, which was closed wheel. I did sports car, which was not sports car. These were prototype race cars with racing for Dan Gurney. So,
Wow.
I've done pretty much everything except for a lot of dirt. I've done some dirt racing, but mainly, asphalt.
Which did you enjoy more? Did you enjoy like track driving, or did you enjoy the ovals? And why did you like the one that you liked better?
I mean, it depended on the track. I get asked all the time, what's your favorite racetrack? Well, I sort of broke them up in categories. My favorite oval was, of course, Indy, but I liked Michigan better. Of big ovals, Michigan was my favorite because you had a little bit more room to race on with Michigan, and it wasn't so sensitive to the elements, right? My favorite street course was Long Beach. My
Wow.
or Grand Prix course was Long
Yeah.
Beach, and I would say Australia was my second favorite. My favorite short oval was Loudon, New Hampshire. That's a one
Okay.
mile oval, right? So
Yeah.
you had the 1 mile ovals, which was Loudon. You had Indy and Michigan, which were high speed ovals. You had street tracks like Long Beach. And then my favorite road course was probably Monterey, Laguna Seca, or Sears Point up in Sonoma. Those are my.
Wow. And see, with you sharing those answers, Willie, I mean, you're already, I mean, think of the versatility and the different skills that it took and the different types of cars and the different horsepower that you were running at each of those. And yet, you know, through all the adversity and through all of the challenges, you were still always right there running for championships. And I mean, it's just a testament to your mindset and saying, hey, I'm going to go, we're going to go win. And I love that. I mean, that's just so inspiring to say, hey, whatever you give me, let's find a way to get it up front.
Well, I knew I was dealing. You've seen salmon go upstream.
Right.
Well, that was my career.
Wow. Great analogy.
And it for a lot of reasons. And, I was, um, you know, I never, there's this new element that athletes are dealing with now. They call mental health, right? Well, there was no such thing as mental health issues when I was growing up. And my grandfather used to say to me when I was on the ranch, if you're bored or unhappy or feeling sorry for yourself, I got 100-foot ditch for you to dig. Right. And you just never showed that because I didn't want to dig a 100-foot ditch 10 inches deep by 10 inches wide. It was because his philosophy was, you're going to be so tired, you're going to go right to sleep and you're going to forget about all your problems. And
Wow. Yeah.
that's how I was raised. And so dealing with what I was dealing with, and I didn't have to deal with it when I was in Europe or England, but when I was racing in America, racing is they call it a rich man's sport. Well, a lot of the kids I was racing against were coming from wealthy families.
Right.
Well, they had a hard time with a black kid, and I was young then, where they didn't know where I came from. They knew I was racing against them,
Yeah.
but they had a problem with me beating them.
Yeah.
And when I found that out, you shouldn't have told me that.
Come get
Yeah,
some of this smoke right here.
you shouldn't have said that, because I would pick at them. I would stir. They weren't going to get in a fight with me. That wasn't going to happen. They knew that they would lose that and like that. So, but a couple, some of them tried to crash me out. Some of them, made it difficult. After a while, and I would provoke it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would provoke it.
Sure.
We're going to establish, especially if I saw that that's how they thought, right? And not
Yep.
all of them were that way. There were some great people
Yeah.
that I raced against and with, like, for example, Al Unser Jr. Al Unser Jr. and I are great friends to this day, talk nearly every day. You knew who the great ones are because they were very secure with themselves.
That's right. Yeah, I like that. And watching, the documentary Uppity, you talked about the influence of your grandfather Henry, and he talked about, how you had to be better than the best. Because he didn't want you to have anything to do with the racing, but be better than the best and go out there and prove that. And I love that he instilled that mindset to you to be like, okay, there's going to be challenges, but hey, you're willing to work, and you had a work ethic about you, and you got that from him, who started that plumbing business. And I just think it's great that you got those roots and you got those fundamentals from your grandfather, and how much of an influence he was.
Well, here's a man that was born in 1899 that I was half raised by, because I was on the ran between the ranch and my family's home in San Jose, California. And when I spent 5 years on the ranch with him, when I came off the ranch, I was ready for the world.
Wow.
He just had no tolerance for quitting. He had no tolerance for being lazy. I mean, he worked the hell out of us.
Yeah.
And that was, he's always said, the harder you work, the luckier you're going to be. And
I like that.
that's how, that was my, that's how I was molded. And,
Yeah.
and he wasn't doting. He went to one race. He went to one race in my career. And it was in Sonoma, California. And I was racing Trans Am. I won the race.
Oh.
And my dad bet me. My grandfather hated racing so much that my dad bet me that he wouldn't come to the race. My dad lost the bet. He came to the race. And after the race, after I left the press room, my grandfather, I walked up to him and I said, well, what'd you think? He said to me, what could you have done better?
Ooh.
I said, well, I won the race, Grandpa. He said, just think about what you could have done better.
Oh, so always looking to perfect the skills, hone the skills, keep the focus. I love that, because it takes someone in you to be honest with you, because you never had a sense of entitlement. You went out there, busted your butt, and took the machine that you had and the engine that you had to try to find a way to get it to the top and win. And I just love that, that hard work ethic that he instilled in you at such a young age, because you were sent out to the ranch after you stole the car and your mom said, hey, go stay with Grandpa.
Well, yeah, no, when I got caught taking one of the cars and went out speeding up a mountain road in San Jose. Actually, it was Mount Hamilton Road. And it was a very narrow road, but it was very challenging to drive on. And I think I was 13.
Wow.
And my parents said, all right, you're going to the ranch. And that was, and they called up my grandfather and said, we're going to send him up to you. And he said, good, because I got a lot of work for him to do up here.
Willie, I love the story where you basically said, hey, I'm not going to college. race driving is my college, and you go over to England in 1977, you took what college, what money would have been for college, and you invested it in yourself, and you believed in yourself, so that way it would open up, opportunities, or hopefully open up opportunities for you. But just to have the faith in yourself and to take that risk in yourself was, to me, awesome, because it showed, hey, I'm all in. This is what I want to do. I'm going to prove to myself that I belong. And you were gaining confidence in that journey, correct?
Well, usually a lot of individuals put themselves, if they've got a goal,
Yeah.
then there's certain tests that you got to put yourself through, right? To be able to have the confidence to go to the next step or the next level. I mean, for example, basketball, you look at LeBron. Well,
Yeah.
LeBron didn't have to test very long. He went right out of high school, right? And you
Right,
look at,
right.
and probably my favorite guy, my favorite all-time basketball player, Shaquille.
Ooh.
Shaquille, and they all knew. I mean, they went up, and Shaquille came from a very disciplined family, and you see how he conducts his life. You see how he conducts himself,
Yeah,
and you see what a businessman he is, right?
that's right. Yes,
And
sir.
and so once I went to England and I won my first race there, which was my second race.
Wow.
Now, mind you, I'm starting with all drivers that were all starting at the beginning, right? And
Against
I
some
won my,
great names too. Yeah.
oh yeah, Nigel Mansell.
Wow.
Mansell was two-time world driving Formula One champion. Him and I started together. So when you're racing these guys, we all don't know where the end result's going to be, but we all are trying to make a name for ourselves and prove that we belong, right? So I won my first race, which was my second race in Snetterton, England. And on the way home, one of my sponsors, he was a Turkish gentleman who owned a bunch of fish and chip shops. And we went to the race in his BMW. And on the way home, he looked at me and he says, "You're going to be a great driver." And I said, "Well, one thing I do know is that I can win now. Now all I have to do is keep winning, keep winning." And on the way home, there was a big storm. We had on a big flash flood of rain came down. And I remember Drew Bandini Brown saying that when Muhammad Ali won in Zaire, right after the fight against Foreman, there was a big downpour. And he said the gods were applauding. And that's what I thought when that happened.
Wow.
That went
Love
through
that story.
my mind. The gods
Oh,
are applauding.
oh, I like that. And talk about the influence that Muhammad Ali had on you when you got to meet him, and how how he kind of put you in another mindset to prepare yourself for some of the obstacles that you didn't know you were going to face, because seeing you win and get up on top of that car and give him the old personality with the Ali shuffle, that's beautiful.
He, of course, Ali's prowess in the boxing ring is legendary. One of the greatest, if not the greatest ever. What I got from him is his character, his resolve, not his showmanship, as much as what he said to me and what I was going to deal with. And I mean, similar to Henry, but more in a way where you had to make sure they know who you are, and you don't back down. And if you see any weakness on their part, you open the weakness. You go for their weakness, because if they see it in you, they're going to go for it. They see a crack, they're going to try to put a jackhammer in it. So it was his resolve and his character and his toughness, and and a very kind man.
Oh,
Everywhere I went with him, he was kind. You see a lot of athletes today and a lot of personalities. They're very sort of aloof. They're not personable at all. Ali Ali was good to everybody, even his detractors.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, he was not. He was just a good, awesome human being.
Oh,
And what I learned a lot is how he dealt with the public, on how he gave his time. And he said, look, he said to me, he says, I've been blessed by the creator to have a great talent and be great at what I've done and created the brand that I've created. And you can't not you cannot disrespect yourself or people or your image or your brand.
Yeah, see, I love that. And I love that one quote that he has where he talks about service is your rent that you pay, for your time on this earth. And you think of those lessons and you think how those words resonate and permeate. And that's what we need in society today. So I love hearing that influence was there on you to help kind of keep you driven and grounded. And then how about like the actor Paul Newman? Because think about when Paul Newman came along in your career, which kind of opened a door to allow you to become now a professional driver and to get paid for your services. Talk about Paul Newman and his influence on you.
No, I met Newman when I was 15,
Wow.
and it was at Riverside, California. There was a race down there, and my dad was racing. He came by and he patted me on the shoulder. I was just 15, and he kept going. And then I saw him when I went to England and I came back. I saw him at the Long Beach Grand Prix Formula One race. I think it was 78, 1978, or yeah, 78 or 82. And I didn't know he was following my career, but I got a call from him out of nowhere in November of 1982. And he says, hey, kid, he says, I got a deal for you if you want it. It's already done. It's not open wheel like you've been racing. It's a Trans Am team. It's well financed, and it's a team that I think you'll do real well in. And recommended them to the sponsor. The sponsor was Anheuser-Busch or Budweiser, right? So he said, it's up to you, but it's a done deal. And he says, I'm not doing myself any favor because I will be racing against you. So I said, well, if you recommend it, I will do it.
Wow.
So that was it. That's how fast I got into Trans Am.
Wow. And then to have such success that you had. And, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Willy T. Ribbs, and an iconic barrier breaker in motorsports, and just honored to learn and be inspired in how he was empowered because of his work ethic. And hopefully you guys are taking in these lessons. You worked extremely hard. You were never given anything. And, your success and your grind and your focus and your continued winning, even in adverse situations, led to, unique opportunities to meet wonderful people. Talk about your relationship with the late, great Jim Truman.
When I came back from England, I didn't have any sponsors, despite being a champion and winning over there and winning, dominantly winning. And
Right.
so I went without a sponsor for a couple of years, and I just happened to meet Jim Truman by accident. Now, I knew who his company was. I had heard of Red Roof Friends, but I didn't know who the CEO was, or the owner, or the chairman, or the president. And I just happened to bump into him at a race that a friend took me to that I didn't want to go to. I didn't want to go, but he said, "Hey, look, go with me. I'd never been before. I'll drive." So we drove from San Jose down to Monterey, California for the race. And I just happened to see a friend that Truman was talking to. So I went and said hi to him, and then Jim introduced himself. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I have no deal." And he says, "Well," he says, "you call me on Monday, and I think we'll change that."
Wow.
And I'd heard those stories before. And I called him. Actually, I called him on Tuesday because he was flying back on Monday. And he went right to work. And everybody that I dealt with in my career that says they were going, there was very few. Truman, Newman, Bill, Cosby, who else? Those were the few that
Wow.
said that when they were going to do it, they did it, and they did it right away. They did not. You didn't have to chase them down. It was. You didn't need a lawyer. You didn't need a contract. They said what they were going to do, and they did it.
On a man's word and a handshake. I mean,
Yes.
that's gone in today's society.
Oh,
But the
on a
fact
man.
that and it gives me chills to hear you say that, because as a race car driver who had to prove themselves time and time again and deal with all the racial, injustices that were going on, and the name calling and the N word, and yet to find a guy who saw value in you and just wanted to help you. I mean, that's what life's all about, Willie. And to think that we lost, Mr. Truman in 1986 to cancer, but what a blessing he was on your life, because he saw what Willie T. Ribs and that brand, what that meant, and how the motorsport world needed you.
Well, if it wasn't for him, there would have been no Newman, and there would have been no Gurney, and there would have been no Cosby. There would have been none of them.
I
All
mean,
of them.
Dan Gurney, wow.
Right. There would have been none of that would have happened without Jim Truman. He
Oh,
was the guy that and never asked for anything. All he wanted me to do is go out and do well and try to win.
just be
Never.
Willie T. Ribs, man.
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
that's wonderful. And you think of, you were a part of the team, and you got to race with the team with David Hobbs. And when you think of, team and teamwork, you think of the LA Lakers when there was Kobe and Shaq. Well, you and David Hobbs were like that Kobe and Shaq. Whose team is it? Because you didn't back down from him, even though you were supposed to be the number two driver, and you pushed him. And I love the story where you're like, hey, if you want me to lose this race, pay me the winning, salary, and then you would consider it. Because if not, you're going to go kick his ass.
Well, what it wasn't expected. Uh, they didn't expect me to go as fast as I went right from
Right.
the start.
Yeah,
Maybe
you were
towards
you
the
were getting more
middle.
out of that car than what
Yeah.
you were supposed to get.
Well, not. I don't know if I was or not, but David Hobbs was supposed to be the number one driver. I'm a rookie. I'm new into this team that Paul Newman got me in. Well, the team manager was a David Hobbs guy. They hired Hobbs. Hobbs was going to be the mentor, the leader of the team. Well, in the very first race in Moroso Park in Florida, I outqualified Hobbs in the very first race.
Wow.
Well, let me tell you what, boy, that
Yeah.
tea didn't taste. That tea that he drank was not tasting good, and he didn't right away. And so we were a rivalry from the very start. And the team didn't expect it. They didn't expect the speed, especially at the very first show. I mean, I had really not that much experience at all, other than 2 days of practice in that car before my first race. Two
Wow.
days. I had never been in a car like that. 2 days.
Wow. There's that
So
versatility once again. Man.
yeah, and so Hobbs and I went at it, and then right to the race before the final race in Las Vegas, which was Riverside. The team wanted me to finish second to Hobbs, and I told him, I said, look, I've been eating Hobbs steak and kidney pie all year. Okay, so you guys are going to have to pay me first place money. And originally, the guy said no. The owner said no. I said, well, it's no. I'm not finishing second. I'm not going to take a powder for a guy that can't beat me. So they wanted that championship. They wanted the manufacturer's points. So when I got in the car, when I reached for the switches, you got the switches to turn it on. As I was reaching for the switches, I looked at the owner. He had his head in the car, and he says, "Okay." Yeah.
Oh man, I love that, Willie. And then I also love the story where you got to meet Don King. And Don King, of course, just a phenomenal promoter, an amazing, networker with, sponsors and whatnot. I love the story where you met with Don King, and after weeks of going through contracts, where you're like, you know what? I'm not some punch drunk, boxer who's hitting the head and just thrilled to be in the ring. Hey, I'm here, because you're Willie T. Ribs, and you were able to, utilize his strengths and sign a contract with him because you used your mind to say, you know what? How can I better myself and better my brand? Great story.
Well, I met him. I was racing at the Caesars Palace Grand Prix in 1984, and it was after the race. Now I want you to picture this. I come in to the pits, and I'm getting out of the car, and I'm taking my helmet off, and off maybe about I'd say 15 feet away was an African American gentleman in a suit. Right now we're in Vegas. It's hotter than hell. Okay, we're outside, right? And he's in a suit and tie, and I'd never seen him before. And I'm thinking, I'm wondering who could that be. And so as I done talking with the team, I'm heading back to my pit, and he says, Willie T, yes, I'm so-and-so, and I work for Don King. And he would like to invite you to meet with him this evening. There was a fight going on there between, I think it was Larry Holmes and Bone Crusher Smith.
Oh, wow.
Bone Crusher. So he says he would like to meet with you and then invite you to the fight. So do you accept? I said, yeah, I'll be there. What time do you want me in his office? He says, well, 6 o'clock, 6 or 7 o'clock. We're going to be about an hour before the fight. So I got back to the room, and I called Ali. And he said, who are you going to talk to? I said, I'm going to go see Don King. Don King? You ain't going to be a fighter. I said, no, sir. He wants to talk to me about something. Leave your wallet in the hotel. So I went over and I met with him, and I went in. I think it was at the Riviera. It was the Riviera at the time, and we met for about half an hour. Willie, I walked in the door. One of his assistants opened the door, and as I walked, he was sitting down at a desk, and he was sort of rocking back like this. Willie D, Willie D. You're going to be the next champ. That was the first words out of his mouth. So I said, well, we're that's the direction we want to go. You need to have somebody, you can't trust any of those people. You need me. It was classic. It was classic. And I could see how he wrapped so many fighters around his finger. Because he's he's charming as hell.
Yeah.
And he's aggressive and he goes right to it.
Yeah.
So he said, I want you to think about me, Don King, only in America, representing you. And that's how it started.
Wow. Wow. Great stuff. Because you think of that personality and that persona and, the success that he had as a boxing promoter for Ali and the Rumble and the Jungle and the big thing. I mean, just amazing. Your journey in motorsports has allowed you to meet some phenomenal people. Who are some of your favorite people that Willy T. Ribbs got to meet because of the success that you had behind the wheel?
Probably everyone that I mentioned, without a doubt. I would, everyone I met, I wanted to listen to, because it was like going to, a lot of people go to Harvard for a law degree or Yale or whatever. When you're around those individuals, it's like going to class. So I wasn't trying to impress them with my knowledge. I wanted to know what they knew. So being around Ali and listening to the stories, being around Newman, being around Bernie Ecclestone, right?
Oh,
Jim
that's the Formula One executive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And and when I was growing up on the ranch with Henry, you didn't talk that much.
Yeah.
You listened. And because you can't talk and listen at the same time. So that was where it sort of, I wanted to learn as much as I could as with the small time that I had with them, right? Even with race drivers like Bobby Unser. Oh man,
wow.
What a, before Bobby passed a couple of years ago, I went, he called me up, Willie, won't you and Big Mama come down to Albuquerque and spend 3 days with me and Lisa? And I couldn't wait. Flew down there, and mind you, he had my wife drunk at 10 a.m. on rum and root beer. But the stories and what you learn and what you can, the things you pick up on terms of the technical side of the sport, right?
Oh, yes.
And what he did in different situations, what changes he made. It's invaluable. And I see why, Al Unser Jr. is as great as he was. For one, he was great naturally, but then he had his dad, Al Unser Sr., and he had his uncle Bobby. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
I mean,
the knowledge, the experience, the lessons. Oh man, walking encyclopedias.
Exactly. And there's so much technical side to the sport, right?
Yeah.
A lot of sports, so it's technical, but it's more physical, right? Physical attributes. Racing, if that car is not as good as you are, you're not going to win.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you're sharing because, ladies and gentlemen, again, we're with Willy T. Ribbs. He's talking about the skill set of being able to listen to learn. He wasn't going there to, with an ego. He went there humbly listening to these legends and these icons to learn. And it's a skill set to be able to listen. So trust me, when Willy T's dropping that knowledge on you, soak that up like a sponge because it is. Whenever you can be around the people who are the best at what they do and you can listen and learn from them, you're adding tools to your toolbox. Thank you for sharing that, Willy. That's good stuff. And just
well, you're a coach.
Yeah.
You're a coach, Scott. I mean, one of the greatest, um, one of the greatest things or statements that I had ever heard John Madden make was, when you play for me, I want you to be on time. I want you to pay attention, and I want you to play like hell.
There you go.
That's
Yep.
all anyone needs to know. It's pretty simple.
Yep.
Okay. Be on time, pay attention, and play like hell.
Yeah. See, and I love that. I mean, the beauty in that is in the simplicity. I mean, yeah, you're going to bring a
Exactly.
skill set to the table, but yet what you can learn by just going out and playing hard and listening, learning, learning from each other, learning from your teammates, the diversity of your teammates, and taking people's knowledge to increase your knowledge and your brand. Boy, you cannot put a price tag on that, Willie.
No, no, you can't. And I one thing about growing up, I didn't have to be forced to adopt that. Adopt that. Well, skill set. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
another skill set, right?
You bet.
And but I wanted you have these ladders, and you have these levels that you want to get to,
Yeah. It's a
right?
process. Yeah.
It's the process,
That's
and
right.
I was going to do everything I could to make that process happen.
Yeah, I love that. Willie, there are so many people out there who could learn from your experiences, learn from your journey, learn from your trials and tribulations. How can people contact Willie T. Ribbs to have you come be a corporate speaker or speak to NBA teams or college and university teams or corporate teams or CEOs with their franchises? Where can they get a hold of Willie T. Ribbs to enhance what they do, and you help them with building their franchises?
Well, I mean, I guess WillieTRibs.com, right? Official
Yes, sir.
WillieTRibs.com website. If they want to email me at willie.ribs@yahoo.com, that's another way. And people find me from all over the world.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
we, despite what's happening in the world today, I mean, I think what we're seeing, and I hope it's not the end of the road for mankind, but what we're seeing is just a no respect for human beings, no
Yeah,
respect for human life.
yeah,
Human life. We're not on this earth long anyway.
that's right.
Okay. Before you know it, you're a teenager. Before you know it, you're in your 30s. Before you know it, you're in your 50s. And then that window closes. When
Yeah,
you're young, it's like this. When you get older, we're not that long. And I hate to see what's happening in the world. And it's tragic, because you would think mankind would be more intelligent as time goes on.
yeah,
You
I
would
like
think,
that. If we can't learn from our past mistakes and we repeat mistakes, I mean, we're dooming ourselves and this human race. So I love those words of wisdom. And Willie, before we go, you shared with me, I mean, if you can share that, you've got something kind of big coming up here in the near future, about your story. And can you share with our viewers and listeners of, what that process is, and what that is leading to for you, for Willie T. Ribbs?
as a matter of fact, Scott, coach, I had to jump off my conversation and my sort of scene setting with Showtime. The writer, Showtime bought the life of my life rights for a TV series.
Oh,
That TV series will be produced by the great Brian Koppelman, who produces the show Billions for Showtime.
wow.
Will be
Wow.
directed by um, um, Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle,
Ooh,
director, Brian Koppelman, producer.
Wow.
4 years, 10 episodes a year, made for TV, and we're hard on it. We should be going into production in the fall.
Oh, congratulations on that, Willie. It couldn't happen to a better person. You have a servant heart. You're generous with your time. You care about people. And God ain't done with you yet, brother. So keep doing what you're doing. I can't thank you enough for sharing this time with us here on the Coach Scott Field Show. Ladies and gentlemen, Willie T. Ribbs, a barrier breaker for motorsports. This man is a legend. He's an icon. And when you want to learn about overcoming trials and tribulations and dealing with other people's biases and prejudice, right here is your man, the living legend and icon, Willie T. Ribbs. God bless you, my friend. Thank you so much for being a part of the show, brother.
Thanks, Scott. And just teach me how to dribble a basketball when I see you.
Hey, let's do that. You come out here to Salt Lake City. We'll do some hikes and do some fishing, and I'll show you some. I'll show you some hoop. If you take me out on a go-kart or something, teach me how to race.
You follow me, and I'll get you up to speed.
Hey, start your engines, baby.
You bet.
All right. Awesome.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for watching another edition of the Coach Scott Field Show. That's my man, a friend for life now, Willie T. Ribbs, the icon. Thank you.